Rights. Manus Quilly representing the People's Movement in Ireland, a political activist with the United Left Party and a shop steward for the SIPTU Trade Union. On Friday night I spoke about the banking crisis and the huge debt burden we face in Ireland and the underpinning issue of euro membership. Today I would like to talk about a few points.
Hold one second. Go ahead.
Today I would like to talk about a few points regarding resistance to the Troika and to dispel the myth being communicated to the European media by the Irish government that all is well in Ireland in order to project a good image to the markets. Since 2007 unemployment has trebled in Ireland. We have seen domestic economy collapse by 25%.
Oh, there's a problem. Slow down. Not on this slow down. No frustration.
Since 2007, unemployment has trebled in Ireland. Regarding resistance to the Troika and to dispel the myth being communicated to the European media by the Irish government that all is well in Ireland in order to project a good image to the markets. Since 2007, unemployment has trebled in Ireland. We have seen domestic economy collapse by 25%, with 80,000 people, mainly young workers, emigrating every year. We've had 7 national austerity budgets since 2008, which have resulted in a series of indiscriminate tax measures and cuts to public and social spending, drastically hitting the living standards of workers and their families. Essentially, the poorest and those with the weakest voice have been made to pay for the crisis, while those who caused it, the rich, the speculators and bankers, get off. We have seen no wealth tax introduced in Ireland. In fact, our corporation tax has remained at 12% despite the crisis. In 2011, following the mismanagement of the economy and humiliation of the Troika deal, the Fianna Fáil party, which has dominated Irish politics since 1932, was severely punished by the Irish electorate. Not only had the Irish people rejected the bank deal overseen by Fianna Fáil, they had given the left and the centre-left an historic vote of more than 40%. However, rather than build a strong opposition to the Troika and austerity, the Labour Party, in pursuit of power, entered a coalition government with the Christian Democrats, which has continued to sign up to the Troika memorandum. The neoliberal argument that austerity would work in Ireland and that the economy would turn around after years of pain is no longer working. In fact, the economic indicators and the social consequences of austerity are pushing people to the edge. Besides the historic election of 2011, signs of working class resistance have been weak in Ireland. However, the cuts imposed by the Troika are now hitting the bone, and we are at a turning point. Last year, when the government...
Slow down.
That's fine, yeah. Last year, when the government attempted to introduce a home tax at the Troika's request, less than 50% of the population registered in a massive national boycott. Huge rallies led by community activists and the United Left Alliance forced the government from introducing the tax. However, they are now in the process of introducing it as a capital government and central revenue tax, which is to be paid in May, with huge fines and imprisonment being threatened by the government for those who don't pay. As an act of social disobedience against the debts of bankers and speculators, it shows when mobilised, the Irish people will fight back. The other significant resistance is the possible rejection by workers of the second partnership agreement between government and public sector unions, formulated about 2 weeks ago. The first agreement, called Croke Park 1, implemented in 2010, was an attempt by the government to cut public sector budget by reducing wages by between 10 and 20%, an introduction of a pension levy charge for public sector employees, compulsory redeployment, flexible work practices, a hire freeze, non-replacement of hired workers, termination of contract workers, and a voluntary redundancy package. The only concession was that there would be no compulsory redundancies for permanent staff. This has resulted in a 10% reduction in public sector employees in Ireland, and in some areas it's been greater, particularly in the health services. And it has been coupled with outsourcing of contracts and services, and a heavier workload and increased pressures for workers who remain, as many of those who left were experienced and older workers. In December, the government announced it needed to make an additional saving of €1.5 billion to reduce the deficit. It said it would do it unilaterally if the unions did not agree to the talks, and it put forward possible proposals for privatisation of state bodies. On this basis, some unions refused to engage in the talks, and many withdrew during the talks, mainly unions representing low-paid workers and frontline and emergency workers. The leadership of the main unions, Impact and SIPTU, remained and have backed a new agreement which will further reduce the pay of workers and further increase the reform and efficiency agenda, including longer working week and less holidays. The pay cuts will disproportionately hit frontline and emergency workers who rely on emergency workers who rely disproportionately on unsocial pay rates, and their pay will be cut by 25%. For the first time in the history of the state, the police force is engaged in industrial action. It's hard to say what the outcome will be. Workers are being balloted in the next few weeks, but the government is doing a good job of dividing public sector workers and private sector workers. By colluding with the government, the main unions have not helped to build solidarity among workers. They have weakened their authority. And for example, not once through the crisis has Irish Trade Union Congress called for a general strike. Congress did organise a day of action against the bank debt on February the 7th, which mobilised 1,000 workers and people. However, many have seen it as a cynical exercise to strengthen the union hand in advance of the Croke Park talks, rather than build a mass movement against the Troika and the austerity measures. In this regard, they have betrayed the 4,000 unemployed and those emigrating every year and the working class who are suffering. The argument by the leadership of the unions and the Labour Party that the situation will be worse misses the point. That in the interest of workers, it is not the same as capital. The Troika and the Irish capital class are using the crisis to drive down wages and conditions. By the time the crisis is over, the social gains and labour rights won over decades will be gone. If not that's bad enough, Ireland will be paying the debts of foreign banks and speculators until 2032, and our children will be growing up in a vicious society of barbarism. In order to build a socialist and democratic alternative where mutual cooperation exists between sovereign nations, unions need to stand free alongside the working class in resistance to the Troika dictatorship and to help build and rebuild our societies and reclaim our democracies. Thank you, comrades.